how can you really think about what your journey is and not limit yourself as you are starting out or feel behind the curve because you don't know the answer to what do I want to be when I grow up. Most adults don't know the answer to what I want to be when I grow up. So really just sort of not, we're all figuring it out. Like, do not back yourself into a corner here.
Welcome to Momentum Now by MVP, the podcast that delves into the stories of seasoned professionals, charismatic leaders, and passionate catalysts. Join us as we explore their career achievements, the challenges they've overcome, and their advice for young professionals of color navigating a fulfilling career journey. Today, our co-hosts, Karen McFarland and Bob Brooks, speak with Andrea Walker, the Chief Operating Officer of Cooperman College Scholars. Andrea shares her journey through nonprofit leadership, the importance of providing students with financial freedom to pursue their education, and how to best navigate career pivots with purpose.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Momentum Now. I'm Karen McFarlane, and I am here with my wonderful co-host, Bob Brooks. Hi, Bob.
Karen, it's great to see you. So glad we're here.
Good to see you again. So we're back again for another episode. And we have another wonderful guest. Her name is Andrea Walker. She is the COO of Cooperman College Scholars. She also hails from Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, right? Okay. That used to be my stomping ground, even though I live in New York, because I had a best friend in high school and college that lived there. So I used to be there every single day. So I feel like akin to Newark.
Great. Yes.
So welcome, Andrea.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here today.
Yeah, welcome.
We appreciate you. So just to get everyone, get to know who you are, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and Cooperman's and a little bit about your journey?
Yeah, absolutely. So I am currently the Chief Operating Officer at Cooperman College Scholars, and I came into that role from a couple of years at a number of different nonprofit organizations, all of them focused on education. Cooperman College Scholars is a scholarship organization that is really leaning into supporting students in Essex County with completing a 4-year degree with minimal debt, right? And we do that through both a scholarship as well as a variety of supports to really that focus on the fact that finances are not the main obstacle that people often have. And we want to make sure that everyone is successful when they go into their 4-year institution. And I came into Cooperman College Scholars after being at the Achievement Network in 2 different roles. So it was actually I was there as a network associate, which was my second full-time role in my career. And then left for just about a year and worked as a special projects manager at an extended learning time program, and then came back to the Achievement Network as their director of partnership development, and really sort of started my career in the nonprofit space at a network of charter schools, the Noble Network of Charter Schools, where I was an external affairs associate. And interestingly enough, I came into that role. I went into a doctoral program in Chicago. That was why I was in Chicago. And I really just felt like I understood at some point in my doctoral journey, right, that I did not want to be a professor. And while I did want to work in research, because I knew I didn't want to teach, I wanted to get experience outside of academia. And so that was how I started looking at roles and began working at the Noble Network of Charter Schools. So it's been a windy journey, but always really with the focus being on that. I think there's a lot we can do in the educational space, and I have an interest in how all the things we're doing in education really sort of flesh out in the long run.
And the Cooperman's College Scholars, that's a program that's focused in Essex County.
Yes.
But I'm sure there's lots of lessons that you're learning about what young adults need as they embark in their career and determine what they do next and where they focus. What are some of the challenges that the organization is helping these young adults with most, and what are some lessons that you're seeing early on when people enter the program that are worth talking about?
Yeah, so I think the types of challenges that people are really coming into, which probably mirror a lot of what MVP is working with students on is really what is it that you want to do, right? When you're thinking about your college, you may be thinking of, I don't know what I want to do, so I don't know what college I want to go to, or I don't know what I want to major in because I don't know what I want to do, and my major is going to determine my job. Or I want to do X and I have blinders on. I don't want to necessarily do anything outside of X. And so really thinking about helping people really see expansively, what does it look like if you choose to go to a liberal arts college, and sort of explore. No, your major is not your job. Everyone I work with in my office had a different major, and we are all at this organization. And don't think about your major as your job. They are not a sort of perfect corollary. Like, yes, if you want to go into being an engineer, you probably are doing an engineering as your major. But outside of some of those very specific ones, it's not a sort of one-to-one piece. How can you really think about what your journey is and not limit yourself as you are starting out, or feel behind the curve because you don't know the answer to what do I want to be when I grow up? Most adults don't know the answer to what I want to be when I grow up. So really just sort of not... like, do not back yourself into a corner here. So yeah, I think those are some of the key ones.
Yeah. There's even, I'm thinking about...
Sorry, Bob. I just stepped on you.
No, go ahead. You jump in. Yeah, no, that's part of the fun. You jump in. You go.
No, but I just wanted to kind of like sit on that, what you just said. It was like you're helping them kind of figure out their path in life, but also, by providing them with some financial assistance through your program, that gives you a little bit more financial freedom to plan for the future if you're not as worried about the money or where all the money's going to come from, So I just wanted to highlight that because I think that's empowering in such an amazing way.
Yeah, no, 100%. And being able to graduate, hopefully with little to no debt, so that you don't necessarily feel you have the ability to explore as a young career professional. The more bills you have, the more tied you are going to be to whatever your first role is. And so while all of the advice on how to build your career, how to build mentorship, what type of space might be best, is great advice, if you are financially prohibited from leaving that to go do something else, all the advice can't help you.
And we probably all know young adults that felt like they couldn't afford to invest in a college education because they weren't certain where to focus and what their major was going to be. So I'm just going to sit it out until I figure it out.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice for young adults who are looking, across the landscape of opportunities, and how do they figure out their strengths? How do they figure out where they should focus? How do they determine their next step in embarking in an academic career and their career in general?
I mean, my advice is always to dig in and start doing stuff. Go to college, whether that is, if you have an interest in getting a degree, go down the path of exploring that. Maybe that looks different for everyone. You may be going into college directly after high school, and you do that traditional 4-year degree, live on campus, do what we all see on TV as a college experience. Maybe you go to a community college for 2 years, get the associate's degree, do some work in a field you may be interested in, and go back and complete your bachelor's. Whatever that looks like for you, right? If you have the interest to do it, right? But also for young college students, explore. I went to science schools for my whole life. My elementary school was a science school. My middle school was a science school. My high school was a science school. We took 4 sciences all 4 years when I was in high school. And I wanted to be a chemist. And I walked into college and majored in political science and philosophy. Just, what are you interested in, right? Like, I got philosophy class, they gave it to me. I didn't even sign up for it. It was in my intro set. And I took intro to philosophy, and it was almost like, so wait, this is a field of just thinking about hard questions and kind of riffing on that, like, and digging into it, right? Finding the pros and cons of it, disagreeing disagreeing, tearing ideas apart, building them back up. And I loved that, right? It was not something I had really done up until that point, or done in a formal way, right? Like conversations I had with friends, conversations I had with family, with my sisters, could probably always have been described as like wide-ranging philosophical types of conversations, but I wouldn't have described them that way. We were just having fun. We were just talking. So experiencing that in the college setting, I think opened a new set of doors for me. That was, it was something I found interesting, and really giving yourself that space to explore and find out what you like, find out what you're interested in. Like, I watched West Wing, I think, starting when I was in middle school. I love politics. And so I majored in political science. But again, I didn't walk into college thinking that was even part of the plan. So I think it's important when we get to spend time figuring out what we enjoy, because often what we enjoy are tied to our strengths. I am, one of my biggest strengths is as a problem solver, right? And that has its benefits and its challenges. I often see things as a problem to be solved, which is not always the best way to view the world. But also, it means that I thrive in spaces and in types of projects and in environments where there are problems to be solved. And that has been a driving force of my career path without me being able to identify it for half of the career path, until I was really able to go, why is it that when everything starts to feel like chaos, do you start to like get excited, right? Why is a new project very exciting? A recurring project not so exciting. There's nothing to be built. This process already exists. There are no new paths to figure out in this. It's an existing thing. And so, but I had the space to dig into that and to explore that. And I always want to encourage young people, right? I encourage people to give themselves that space, right? Don't look for this hard skill that everyone is going to be the one thing that makes me figure out what my job is. This is the thing I want to be when I grow up. Really explore what you enjoy, and what are the things that you enjoy tied to as a skill set. Where do you find fulfillment? It won't be in every aspect of your job. Not liking 10 to 20% of your job is kind of just jobs, right? That doesn't mean you hate your job. What is the parts you enjoy? Lean into those. Why do you enjoy them? How can they help you figure out what's the next step, whether it's at the same company or a different company? Where do you see a gap that fits along with what you liked doing? And how do you kind of slot yourself into that?
That's really good advice. It's to focus on what you like, not just because you can get sucked into like all the minutia, the detail of the things that that you find annoying. But use it as a learning opportunity for yourself to learn about what you like and how to grow into those tasks and those roles, and then use it to power your next move. I love that. I just want to, I don't know, I'm just still intrigued. I thought I was going to let it go, but when you say, we'll pivot back for a second. You said you went into a doctoral program, and then and this kind of leans into what you're saying, right? You were in the doctoral program, and then you determined that that's not what you wanted to do. So just want to like dig into that. Like, how did you figure out that you wanted to make a pivot? And getting a doctoral program is like a big deal. And then actually deciding to pivot out of something that's a huge deal. You know what I mean?
Oh, that is a thing, right? Another part of when I think about working with young people, having difficult conversations and making difficult decisions. And so I was teaching and a research assistant as part of the doctoral program, and I think I was a decent instructor. I mean, I'm looking at it from my perspective. It looked like I was a decent enough instructor, but I didn't enjoy it, right? I was anxious, nervous, just a ball of jitters before every class. I always felt like you had to just over prepare. It felt like there was, as much as I loved discussion, right? I liked philosophy because I liked discussion. It's felt like if you weren't controlling the space rather than it being kind of a discussion where everyone could learn together, it didn't feel right. Like I wasn't feeling the passion. This was not the space for me to be in the long run. And as much as I like academia, I did not want to be a professor, right? And so recognizing that, I said, and my interest was education. I was at the time studying educational policy under American government. And so I said, I want to see what it looks like. Like, if you're thinking about it from a political standpoint, we make educational policies, and those kind of trickle down to looking completely different in the classroom than what the original intention of that law, policy, regulation, et cetera, was. And I wanted to see that, right? I was like, what does this actually look like on the ground? I want to be in an educational space in order to understand that and build a set of experiences that would frankly set me up to not be in academia. Because if you're in academia, it's real hard to pivot out without some other experiences. And so I started looking at jobs. I called the graduate program director and told him I was going to turn down the next year of fellowship because I had to teach in order to do that. I couldn't teach and do the full-time job. And so I was working, and I'm an ABD. So I was working on my dissertation and working a full-time job. And what that functionally looked like was, nonprofits are all sort of a 9 to 5 on paper, but they're however many hours you are putting in. So however many hours that was per week of work, Monday through Friday. Saturday was a real, I need to do things in order to live. You got to do laundry. You got to go to the grocery store. You just have the normal things, errands that have to happen. So it was a real sort of life regulation day. And then Sunday was all research and writing. And there's only so long you can do that before you're like, I have to stop. This is horrifying. I hate this. I am not happy. I am far from my family. I am far from my friends. And I don't even have an end goal in mind. I'm just doing this because it's the path I'm already on. Why? Stop. And so somewhere in there, it was like, okay, so what does shifting look like? And so I started looking at roles closer to home. I wanted to be closer to friends, closer to family, closer to a support system. And so that was when I got the role at the Achievement Network, which was back in New Jersey. And somewhere in the midst of that, and really doing that work and working in the nonprofits, both when I was working at Noble, when I was working at ANET, just kind of leaning into the types of things I enjoyed doing, they were not leading me back to spend more time on this dissertation. And so I think the initial pivot was kind of a clean one. The sort of trickle into, are you going to finish this PhD, was a longer term one of, and as you follow this career path, does it benefit you to do this?
Thanks for sharing that experience. It reminds me of a book called The Dip by Seth Godin. And in The Dip, he talks about how we all have these temporary setbacks, a dip, and that sometimes it's better to quit and reset than to just push through it, right? A lot of us who also know about the book Grit know that, in the lessons of the book, The Grit, it's like just being tenacious and powering through some things to get to your goal. But it sounds like you took a lesson from that book, The Dip. Could you tell us about that lesson, what you did to recalibrate, and what you did to set yourself on a track towards success?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I'm trying to put myself back in that mindset. I mean, I think that a lot of it was really getting to the heart of what, at that point too, what are you setting yourself up for? If you are looking around in this moment and even what you see as the finish line of this does not give you excitement, does not give you joy, you do not see joy in this path. Making the hard decision to pivot, but also trying to figure out what that hard decision is, right? For me, it wasn't just a clean, okay, I'm not doing this doctoral program anymore. It was, what does experience outside of this look like? And how do I start to get those experiences? And I was very fortunate that I fell into the role at Noble. I mean, I've been fortunate in all of my roles, if I'm honest. I have always found mentors there. I have always had experiences of growth there. Even roles, one of my absolute favorite roles I've worked in was probably one of my shortest roles, right? It was one where I absolutely loved the job, but I did not love the environment I was in doing it. And for me, it was a real moment of digging in to say, what do you enjoy about this role if you want to leave here? Like, so what
Mm.
is it? Like, figure that out, because how can you get that in something else? And so I think, I don't want to say, recognizing that we are human and our emotions about a situation are reflective of a real part of the situation, right? So if you do not have enjoyment in this situation, figure that out. Like, what is it something resolved? Um, or is it not? Is it that, sometimes we are feeling stagnant at work? For me, it has definitely happened. I'll say I felt stagnant at work, but it was not about the job, it was about other things. And so maybe I actually needed to lean into a hobby, lean into some of my friendships, actually just expand my life outside of work, because I've gotten so far down the path of work being the main thing in my life that I can't find the enjoyment in it. But it wasn't necessarily related to work. I've made the choice to do that. So maybe I need to lean into just expanding other parts of my life. And sometimes it was like, no, you don't enjoy this job and you need to leave it. But spending the time to figure that out, right? And honoring yourself and your emotions in that. I think we too often try to take the humanity out of the decisions we're making and try to take ourselves out of the decisions we're making. And that's not going to help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really important. I love that, honoring yourself and your emotions, because, I think especially when you're young, right? You are like, I got to get this first job. It could, depending on your field, it could be a little difficult. Depending on whether you have loans, you feel that pressure. But what it sounds like you're saying is still give yourself the space and remove some of that pressure as much as you can to set yourself on the right path, but also don't feel like beholden to that path. Like, you can shift and change. But how I mean, we've all been in our careers for a while. Someone that's just entering, that's very empowering, but they may not see themselves in that space. Like, what would you say to someone who's coming out of college and they're just trying to break in, and they may not encounter what we're saying, what's being said right now?
Yeah. I think, again, sort of leading to one of the things I said earlier, give yourself space to explore. I think if you know what you want to do when you're coming out of college and you find a role that fits into that and it is wonderful and you can lean into finding mentors, finding growth spaces, and just going down that path, great, do it. I just don't think that's most people's experience. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's a lot more like, I came out, I was looking at jobs, I went into the job that hired me, and I'm doing it, and there are things about it that are okay, but if I saw myself doing this for the rest of my life, I might have to gouge my eyes out. So what do I do next? I don't know. Um, Again, what are the things in the job that you enjoy? If it's none of those things, that's real, right? So
Mm-hmm.
actually just go on. I mean, in my head, I thought of Idealist because I work at the nonprofit, but go on job boards, Indeed, whatever. Look at jobs. Just look at them, open them, read the job descriptions. Are there lines in those job descriptions that sound exciting? If they sound exciting, why? Can you do something that, like, what do you have any skill sets that can go into that thing? Can you find jobs that have more lines that you like than dislike, that are still entry level so that you can go in and explore those? Think about the things outside of work that you're doing that you enjoy. When you were in college, were you in a student organization? What types of things did you do in that organization? Why did you like it? How do you leverage talking about those experiences? Were you the person in the dorm who looked and said, all these events you keep organizing for us are terrible, and helped to organize better events? That speaks to people skills. It speaks to proactiveness. It speaks to collaboration. Really think about yourself broadly, because you exhibit your skill set outside of your professional life. So where do you see those skills at play? Are you the person who, when your friend gave you a problem, you do research until 2 a.m.? Where do you see that sort of research skill and hyper focus in your professional life that you can leverage and talk about? Because really, we are whole people and we have skills, and they will not all be those easily definable hard set skills. So you got to spend time really figuring out what those skills are, what those traits are, and feel feel the space to do it, which, again, the realities of bills are you won't always have the sort of professional space to do it, but how can you start to take steps toward it? How can the next job, even if it's not the job, be closer than the first one? And how, it might take a long time, but, how do you continue to go down that path?
These like little pearls, right? How can the next job be closer to the, it's, it's just not just from A to Z and you're there. It's literally A, B, C, right? And I think that's something that we have to.
And what and do you have any advice around the cadence of that, right? Because we've all seen people in their careers pivot, and sometimes it seems like it's an overnight pivot. They get a new manager that they don't care for, or there's a new policy, or there's a merger and they want to get out. Is there something that young professionals should be aware of for their entire career, or what kind of cadence should they be expecting when they want to make a pivot? What kind of timeline should that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that there's a right answer to that. I think it's different for everyone, their job, their journey. If you are at a company that has a merger or a new set of managers and you are not aligned with some of the things they are doing, it might be, I need to get out of here as soon as financially feasible. It may be that it's a growth opportunity, right? How do you lean in and learn from some of the things that are happening so that you have a different set of skills that you're taking to your next job? I don't know that there's one answer. What I do think is important is when you know that you are unhappy or stagnant or in a skill set that is not beneficial or edifying to you, and you stick it out for 5, 6, 7 years, you are not helping yourself professionally, because the types of experiences that you are going to be able to sort of be those growth reach moments where you are experiencing personal and professional success are going to be limited because you don't want to be there. You don't want to be doing the thing. You're not going to start inserting yourself into gaps. You're not going to be excited about new opportunities and lean into doing them. You just are kind of thinking about how to get out. And so you are going to be limited in moving forward because you don't have the experiences that will set you up in your next interview, that are going to set you up the next time you're having networking conversations. You're almost closing a door in the long run. And so again, that cadence is going to be different for everyone. But I always want to encourage people to really figure out, if you love where you are but don't necessarily love what you're doing, are there gaps you can kind of fill? Are there people you can talk to just learn more about their role? Is there visibility you can create of yourself so that when opportunities arise, you can potentially be considered for some of those? If you are doing something you love but in a place you don't like, where can you just do something similar in a place you might like? And if it's I hate all of the above, what do you like? I don't want to start at what are you good at, because I think that people naturally clam up, and it's most people's natural inclination to be humble. It's like, well, I don't know what I'm good at, right? I don't think that's the right question. It's like, what do you enjoy? Okay, where do you see your skills and what do you enjoy? And how, now that you've started to identify some of those skills, can you start to use them, leverage them, find roles, find job responsibilities that will use them and that other people will see that skill set in, so that you can hopefully go closer down that path. And that, I'm saying it like it's easy. I don't want to say it is not easy, right?
Yeah.
It sounds wonderful. But that's why I do really encourage people to just sort of read job descriptions. Don't read all of them. I'm not going to tell you you're going to read a job description and be like, I want to do this job. I solved it immediate. But are there particular things in there that were surprising? What in there was interesting? What kind of companies are interesting? What kind of world problems are interesting to you? Really kind of figure out where you will find some sort of personal fulfillment, because that will help it be professionally fulfilling as well as professionally exciting. And when it's professionally exciting, you can continue to grow down that path.
This is great. And then when you ponder what it's like for a person of color, right? What do you wish that you had known now when you were just embarking on your career as a person of color? What advice would you give those who need to navigate situations that they're not accustomed to, or times in work that were different for them?
Probably a lot of things. In this moment, I can think of two. One of them is take up space, right? Don't avoid taking up space. If you have an idea, you have a thought, say it. Don't assume that someone has already thought through this. Don't assume that it's already been discussed. Don't assume you just didn't know about it, so you shouldn't say it because you're actually going to be showing yourself as ignorant or showing yourself as unaware. But say it. Sometimes you're having a thought that actually is really going to help in this situation, to go ahead and be willing to speak up and take up space. I think the other one is build relationships. Yeah, it's very important to build relationships with people who have similar backgrounds, similar experiences, and look like you, right? It's also important to build relationships with people who are not that. I think the diversity of perspectives, the diversity of allies, the diversity of advocates is important, because there are going to be things that are true for you as a young professional of color that you don't have visibility into. They are happening in closed doors. They are happening in other spaces. And so those advocates and
Mm-hmm.
allies are important because you can't change what you didn't even know ever happened. But other people can.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
That is so true. I'm also just kind of thinking back, like, I might have mentioned this before, but I didn't have like formal mentors, right? So it was difficult for me to have those types of conversations, because you have to have those conversations with, like you said, with people that have your similar experiences, so you're not crazy, right? In many ways, or learn how to navigate in that particular way you need to navigate. But just like you said, you need to have those colleagues and friends and mentors that understand the chessboard differently, right? And can, open your
Yeah.
eyes to that so you can
Yeah.
blend those two
Yeah.
experiences. So that's super
Yeah.
important.
Yeah. Especially in larger organizations, where in one large organization where I was tracking my time, it was a habit I had for years. So I just continued to do it, although it wasn't asked of me to track my time, where I was spending my time, what I was doing with my time. And I learned in this large organization, I was spending 10 to 15% of my time in what I would refer to as dysfunctional activities, things like, just navigating the political landscape, or reaching out to individuals that didn't understand an initiative that we were moving forward with, or things like that. And so in large organizations, you talked about giving yourself space. I think you need to make space, especially in
Mm-hmm.
larger organizations, to reach out, connect, and be prepared that there's likely going to be some things that happen that seem a little dysfunctional, but it's part of a large organization moving at a glacier speed, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that when you said it, one of the things that spoke to me was also recognize that everyone has a different skill set and a different excitement in the organization, because there's going to be somebody who was like, I would love to spend 75% of my day convincing people on our initiatives. And there's a space for that. And if that's
Mm-hmm.
you, that space is necessary. Like, it's highlighted. It was a thing that was taking up time from what you wanted to do and what you were best at and what was the goal of your job. But there's going to be somebody who, like, if they could just do that all day, that would be great. And they should, like, you know what I mean? And it's a necessary part of so many companies. So
Yeah,
again,
true.
what
Mm-hmm.
gives you light? What gives you energy? And how do you do more of that?
Well, so it's the skills, and that collection of skills over time, to me, translates into your strengths, right?
Mm-hmm.
So And I think that's also another way to look at that, because you're building that acumen, you're becoming stronger in that. You have your natural strengths, and then you have the ones that you continue to develop and build.
Yes.
And that's also just another way to view yourself, is that you're getting stronger in this particular discipline, and that becomes of higher value to an organization, and helping
Yeah.
people recognize that talent in you
Yeah.
by taking up the space and pushing it forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And leaning into strengths, right? I think we often have the opposite point of thinking about what do I not do well, and how do I spend all my
Yeah.
time improving that? And yes, you do need
Mhm.
to improve things you don't do well if they're a part of your job. I will never tell you not to do that. Definitely spend time on that. But how do you really lean into the things you're doing well and do even more of that and do it better, right? We can always improve in our strengths and skills as well. So don't spend all your time focusing on the things that might be growth areas, but spend time on the things that are your strengths, because that will be ideally the thing that you are really moving toward in the long run. But you want to have things that maybe are not your strengths. You want to still have a little acumen in those as well, so definitely continuing to build them, but not to always be so deficits focused.
That's a really great point, because a lot of times you can leverage your strengths to navigate your weaknesses.
Yes.
And so often, that year-end review is like, hey, you've done a great job, Barry. Now let's talk 25 minutes about where you need to improve. And organizations that are strength-based spend 5 minutes on the things where Barry, as a bad example, needs to improve, and 25 minutes on the strengths that that person has, and how they can leverage them to deliver more for the organization, for themselves, and to be happier because they're leveraging their strengths.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And when you have a
Yeah.
particularly good manager that's kind of already where they're leaning in, I know that this is a podcast oriented toward young professionals, but when you're thinking about being a manager for the first time, I think everyone should really I think about management is how do I make every person on my team look like a rock star? And that is by letting them
Mhm.
shine in their strengths. And so sometimes the question also as a manager might be, how do I take the things they're not good at off their plate? Because someone else
Mhm.
might at it and put it on their plate. It
That
won't
right
always
there.
be there, but it's real.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I know we were right before the show, we are talking a little bit about Strengths Finders, and I was given it was a book at the time that I was given it. Right? It was a book with I think a CD or a code or whatever. And that was the first time I took it. And it really freed me from focusing on my weaknesses, because it gave me permission to say, hey, this is what, to confirm, validate, and give words to the things that I was strong in. And basically it was like, focus on these things. There are other people that are strong in those other areas, and just look for them and
Yeah.
collaborate and partner with them. And you don't have to be good at everything. And for me as a Black woman, right, at that time, much younger, Black young woman, it was really important for me to receive that information, because I felt like I had to over prepare and overachieve for everything. And so it was so transformative. I took it again, maybe like a year or two later. A couple things changed and I did the whole profile. But it was so transformative for me that one of my graduation gifts to people, to college students, is the Strengths Finders for students. I know, and they should take it because I think it's a very empowering tool to understand who you are as you start to walk into the world.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think definitely I felt something very similar when I took it. What you said, it gave me language to think about, to talk about, and think about my strengths. I think that was 100% true for me. And even think about some of the things as strengths that I wasn't thinking about. One of my strengths is input, which I mean, I like information, I like articles, I collect them, I have
Mm-hmm.
bookmarks, insanity. And I would send, people would mention something. I'm like, oh, I read a good article about that. Let me send it to you. And I've never thought about that as a strength. And it was one of the times of going, oh, well, I guess I could see some strengths in that now that it's putting it in
Mm-hmm.
front of me. And
Yeah.
really just giving you the language to talk about it. And also, I mean, very much, it speaks to me so much, the feeling like you have to be over prepared, like you cannot ever get a question that you're not ready to answer as a young Black
Yeah.
woman, right, in a professional space. You
Mhm.
can't ever have somebody ask you about something you didn't start working on. Like, you always need to be at 150%. And so giving yourself space to say, hey, there are other people in this organization who also have strengths, right? Lean into what you're good at and what is your job, and stop feeling like you have to also carry all these other buckets, all these other things. And how do you let them go in a way that also doesn't feel like you just you went from 150% to 70%, right?
Yep.
That's like, what does all of that look like? It's a thing that has like, again, no one answer. But I think it's such it's yes, everything to what you just said.
Well, and when that book first came out, it was called First Break All the Rules. Marcus
Yes.
Buckingham and Kurt Kaufman. It's a Gallup organization tool. They've run that quiz and that Strengths Finders program with millions, tens of millions of people. But it also talks about how strengths are really themes until you develop them as a strength, which is, I believe, skill and knowledge and practice together make it a strength. Yeah. But what's funny is the three of us all have one strength, or theme, I should say, theme in common, which is relator. Have you thought it? Are there times when your relator, which is a theme or strength, has been a weakness? Because strengths can be weaknesses too. And so are there times when you've seen relator, which is being comfortable with asking difficult questions of individuals and getting to know someone and having an instant bond with individuals? Is there a time where you felt like that, or other strengths, if it's not that one, have turned to be a weakness at a time and you have to watch for that?
So I don't immediately think of one for later, though I'm sure it exists. One that popped up most immediate for me was achiever. And interestingly enough, it ties to one of the pieces of feedback I've gotten that was inadvertently one of the most helpful ones in my career. I was at the position, I was still relatively new, maybe about 2-3 months in, and someone was leaving their role. And when I was having a conversation with them, they said, one of the things I'm worried about is I need you to be a support to the executive director when I'm leaving. And right now I feel like you're just running around with like a chicken with their head cut off, which very much feels in the sort of weaker side of achiever, right? I need to get things done to feel like I'm an achiever. So I'm doing things. I'm not doing things in order of priorities. I'm not doing things in order of urgencies. I'm not doing anything not even doing necessarily the right things in the moment. I'm doing things because I need to be doing things. And it, for me, really became kind of a wake up call of take a step back and do things in a strategic way. Yes, it's great that you like to achieve and do things, but if you're not doing things in a way that is benefiting this organization and benefiting your role and like getting to the goals, what is the purpose? Just doing for the sake of doing is not helpful. And so I think that definitely fits in the sort of what one would say is sort of from the strengths finder aspect, the basement of the achiever strength. But really for me also, I think was helpful in terms of how I organize and things. I think, I don't want to say that we learned these lessons and we do them for the rest of our career. Like, I definitely still have moments, particularly when things are very busy, where I realize I'm just doing. It's like, I'm answering emails because I can answer emails and feel successful in this moment. And it's like, okay, that's great, but what do you need to be doing right now? Let's stop and actually get reoriented for the thing you need to be doing, because answering emails is always great, but it is probably not the most impactful use of your time in this moment.
Thank you.
I agree.
Karen, we have a lot of lessons for today. Can you help us wrap these up into some key takeaways?
I'm going to do my best. Okay. I'm sure I'm going to miss some stuff. College is for exploration, right? So don't think that your major is your end all and be all. Just give yourself time to explore and figure out the things that are going to give you fulfillment. Yeah. When you do get a job, right, you might have a mixed experience. But if it's not so great, or even if it is, focus on the parts of the job that you really like and use that to determine and feed your next steps. But if you feel uncomfortable, if you're horrified in the role of the space that you're in, right? Stop. Well, ask yourself why, and then stop. And if need be, pivot out at the pace that you need to pivot out in, right? Don't be afraid to shift. As Bob brought up, do the dip, like recalibrate, right? And get out of the dip. Honor yourself in emotions. Also, how can your next job be, the stepping stone to the following job? So just collect those experiences, build those strengths, and keep using them to pay yourself forward. I'm just going to use that term, right? Take up space, especially as a person of color, right? And don't be deficit focused. I really like that. Don't be deficit focused. That's what I got. But there's so many that I know that I missed.
Pay yourself forward. Yes.
Yeah. There is another good one in there. Thank you so much, Karen. There's another one too that I heard, which is build relationships with people that look like you and not like you.
Not like you.
There's lessons from both sides of the equation there. And I thought that was great advice too. Before we let you go, we'd love to ask some rapid fire questions.
Yes.
Andrea, so let's dig in. You ready for this? So just quick, crisp answers. Do your best.
Try.
If you want to pause and tell a quick story, that works too, right? What was your favorite subject in high school?
High school physics, probably.
Nice. High voice too. What was your least favorite subject in high school? Math.
Despite the fact that physics is mostly math.
I was like a little confused.
What's the best advice you've ever received?
Probably the don't run around with the chicken with your head cut off. But really, I think it's lean into your strengths. Really, like it was. I want to say on a Strengths Finder podcast, I saw that your strengths are stronger than you think and your weaknesses are weaker than you think. And so ask for help. And I think that has been a big one.
Is there some advice that you did not think was very good? What's the worst advice you've ever received or heard?
Anyone that just tells you to just do it, like whatever it is, right? Like whatever you're struggling with or whatever you're anxious about or whatever, it's like, just do it. Anything that doesn't honor that there is a process and pain points and obstacles to that.
Nice.
If I could just do it, I would have.
Nice. And we've talked a lot about strengths today, but what's your greatest superpower?
I problem solving, I think. I really like leaning in and getting my hands dirty when something seems complicated. Problem solving. Personally, professionally, relationships, at work, operations, computers that just shut off, all of it.
Nice. And how about a weakness? What's a weakness of yours and how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think probably my biggest weakness is, as much as I talked about building relationships, really nurturing and maintaining them over the long run. I have many amazing people in my life and history who I did not keep up with, and I sincerely regret it.
Thanks for that. My favorite question, last one for today, for me anyway. What's your why? Why do you do what you do?
Yeah, that one's always a difficult one for me, but I think it is really that for me, it feels like the world is chaos. Everything is kind of chaotic, right? And being able to find paths through that chaos to hit the end goal, which for me is often how do we elevate and help young people get to their next step through educational spaces. But I think that that's true for everyone, for whatever that end goal is. Like really for me, that why is finding a path through all of the noise. Yeah.
Thank you for that why. Thanks for your time today, all your insights, talking about strengths and taking the time to understand and embrace emotions and how emotions matter and everything else that you've provided us today. It's really great to be with you and spend this time with you. And thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. This is fun.
Thank you so much. You make the Brick City proud.
Thank you.